What is up, y'all? We are here for episode 2 of The Real Housewives of Lisa Barlow. Let's keep it real. Salt Lake City. Lisa's back. Lisa, like I told y'all last week, she's literally one of my guilty pleasures. She's one of my guilty pleasures. She's one of my favorites. She cracks me up, and she did this entire episode. She did. Bronwyn, she was trying to give it back to her, and she was. I give it to her, but like it didn't really do anything because we know she gonna eventually be at Lisa's beck and call, trying to be best friends with her and wanting to be liked, which is why it would never hit. But it was just funny. This was funny. But hit subscribe for me if you are new here. You probably are. If you do end up joining the video, thumbs up the video. It helps so much. Y'all did really, really well with the first video for it being the first video for this franchise. Y'all killed it for me. So do it again. Thumbs it up. It's free of charge. Let me know y'all's comments down below. Let me know y'all's thoughts. I really want to hear it off of this episode. And yeah, share the video. Do that as well. But I will get into it right now. Let's go. All right, so we pick back up where we left off, which is them pretty much waking up on the RV. And they're looking at the scenery and stuff. They get outside, they look at the scenery, they look at the animals, they start brushing their teeth, whatnot. And Heather's sitting there talking about how she can't spit anymore because she got Botox in her lips. I don't know how that gets down because I'm black. I don't know if it's just I don't want to say if it's a white or a black thing, but I just don't know nobody around me that gets Botox. But I guess that's something that happens when you get it. But Bronwyn, she over there trying to cook steak, and Mary was cracking me up because Mary's like, Bronwyn, you don't even like you eat steak, let alone be over there trying to cook. And she's like, yeah, I don't be cooking anything. And Mary's like, yeah, I can tell. But Bronwyn says in her confessionals that she wouldn't eat anything that she touched. And I wouldn't either, considering how that house looked, like what we saw last season with all that shit all around. And when I say shit, that dog shit, I wouldn't be eating nothing that she cooked either. But they sit down and they have their breakfast and stuff, and they're talking around the fire. Now, Heather starts talking about how she basically could have brought her kids, like her girls, up to where they are at the RV camp. But at this point, it's too late because her last one, Annabelle, who's 17 years old, is about to leave the house to go off to school for college. And she starts stating that she feels like this is like the last part of her era, or that era with her ex-husband. And she's basically been waiting for it to be over with her getting out of the house because she's the last one there. And I guess she's trying to state that this just reminds her of him. But the way it came off, I can see why Bronwyn responded the way that she did. Even though I also see what Heather was trying to say, but it just didn't come out right. But she states that all she ever desired was being a wife and a mother, and anything outside of that was pretty much considered like a sin, which I'm assuming is this Mormonism culture. But she states that she was in charge of the kids basically when she was with her ex-husband. And he was in charge of providing. Like, she was in charge of raising the kids. He was in charge of making sure that they all could live. So when he left, she basically was still in charge of the kids while also having to take on the financial burden as well. And she was like, I mean, I never really had a night off. So I can understand how she's exhausted. Like, she literally raised kids by herself because she stated, like, he didn't have custody. The only time he saw the kids was once a week whenever he had, like, dad time with them. But Bronwyn, she tries to empathize with her. And she's like, I mean, I was raised with two parents, like in a 2-parent household. They're still together. So when I decided to have Gwen the way I did by myself, well, she didn't. I don't want to say she decided to, but like, I guess. But had Gwen solo, basically. And she went through the same insecurities that Heather did. Because, I mean, it wasn't really everything that she knew raising a kid would be, considering how she was raised, talking about Bronwyn. But she said, I feel the exact opposite. Basically, I feel like I haven't done enough. Like, I feel like I still want to do a lot more, which is why she stated that she had Gwen bring her boyfriend into the house. So the boyfriend is living with them in the house. And she said she was doing that to make sure that Gwen could stay there longer, which I was like, what? You moved the boyfriend in your house. Gwen is what, 19? And I'm assuming he's around that same age too. So you're letting your 19-year-old daughter have her boyfriend living in the same But she then says like her insecurity is that she needs more time with with Gwen, and she feels like she hasn't done enough. But Heather says like, I feel like Bronwyn is stating that she basically is stating that I don't love my daughter because I want my kids because I want them to leave. That's what Heather's taking it as. And Bronwyn's like, no, not at all. I'm just stating that I just wish that you wouldn't question the way that you did it. And Heather was like, I mean, I don't. I just look forward to starting a new chapter. Like, I look at that as like the last bit of this chapter that I can close when it comes to my ex, which I'm like, I don't really understand that. Because, I mean, I try to see where she's coming from, but it's still like, those are his kids. you gonna look at them and you probably gonna think about them. So are you really closing that chapter of your life? I don't know. But then again, I guess because she's stating like she's no longer having to raise them anymore because they're grown and they're out on their own. So I mean, I guess I get it. But Whitney then says that it's funny because she wants to be stay at home. She wants to be a stay at home mom, but she can't do it now because, as we all know, her business has failed. That was a big source of income for her, and now she has to figure out how she's going to make more money. But she talks about how her and Justin pretty much were successful at first with the business, and then it just plummeted, and she's pretty much like, I got to pick up the pieces and figure out how to get this money now. But Whitney then asks Mary how Robert Jr. is doing, and she's like, he's doing as well as he can at this point. They're seeing later on, I'm proud of Mary. Mary's a good mom. She's a really good mom, but their scenes last season and this season, they're very, it's I don't want to say it's hard to get through, but it's really raw. Like, it's really raw. It's about the real stuff that you're going to see on reality TV. But she states like he has his highs and lows, and they're pretty much taking it day by day. And that's really what you can do. That's all you really can do in that situation. But Mary says that like her and his dad are pretty much telling him they can't babysit him. Like, they got to literally let him do it himself. Like, he has the tools. He knows what he needs to do, and now he just has to do it. And they made a pact just to take it day by day and let him figure it out. But she then tells them that she didn't have the support system that they essentially had when it came to raising her son, because it was just her son, her and his dad. And she's like, I mean, she's pretty much giving them props to raising more than one kid at one time by themselves. Like, she was struggling doing it by herself with Robert Sr. helping her with just Robert Jr. But Angie's like, it's time to pack it up. They get back on the RV and get ready to go home. But the RV gets stuck. And all of them talking about pushing it. You know, Mary was not pushing shit. Mary sat on that she sat on that RV and was like, I ain't pushing nothing. I ain't pushing no RV. And they sitting there pushing it, and she's sitting there on the RV. That was funny. So we get them quick little transition scenes in between before we get to Heather pretty much getting ready to go meet with Lisa. But while she's talking, while she's driving over there, she's talking to Angie on the phone. And Angie's pretty much asking her if she's going to Amy's party, which I'm assuming Amy's going to come later in the season. I'm assuming, I'm probably right, but I don't know it. But Heather was like, Amy's a socialite. Like, there's really not too many people that are socialites outside of just like the church. And she's like, she's kind of like the who's who of Salt Lake City. But Heather then arrives to the restaurant, and Lisa Barlow is in there, my favorite. So they ended up hugging and stuff, talking about each other's fits and whatnot. But Lisa states that she felt like she ain't seen Heather in forever. And Heather's like, yeah, I miss you. We know you do. You can't go a day without thinking about her. But Lisa's like, same. So they ended up ordering food. And Lisa ends up asking how the trip was and whatnot, and where did they go. So Heather tells her, like, we was on an RV, and Lisa's like, I can't even fathom the thought of Mary actually out there camping, and none of us could. But Heather then says that she was sad that Lisa wasn't there. We know. And Lisa's like, yeah, I was too. You weren't sad, Lisa. Come on. But Heather then says that even though you weren't physically there, you were there from the jump. Lisa's sitting there bracing herself like, they were sitting there talking about me again. Of course, Lisa, apart from Mary and Meredith to a certain degree, them other women can't live without talking about her. But Heather then says that she's not going to lie to Lisa because their friendship is about being straightforward and whatever. She's going to tell her everything. Yeah, because you literally that's your way of getting Lisa to love you. Like, that's what you want. You want her to love you. That's just really what it is. So you're going to tell on any and everybody to get on Lisa's good side. But she then tells Lisa about Bronwyn pretty much researching her lawsuits and whatever, and was sitting there just trying to annihilate Lisa. And Lisa's getting more and more irritated as she's talking. And Heather's like, I mean, it's something that you need to squash. And Lisa's like, I mean, how can you squash something that doesn't exist? Like, it's a baseless claim that got dismissed, and there's another one on the way. Like, we didn't even do anything. So she was sitting there saying that her confessionals are obviously they're not that bright because people would know that a dismissed lawsuit is nothing. It's dismissed. Like, no one sues the bottom bitch, they go for the top. I'm like, okay, Lisa. But Heather then asked, like, what it is even for? Like, what was the lawsuit for? And Lisa's like, stating very quickly, she says a design that they had sold to a business 15 years ago that was baseless and malicious. And she then says that they had another one that got dismissed immediately. She didn't really explain much of anything. Like, to a certain degree, she was very vague with what it possibly could be. But Lisa then says that she don't own the same businesses as these girls, pretty much talking about everybody else in the group. I don't own the same businesses as everybody in that friend group. Like, I live a different life than all of y'all. She said that shit to Heather. And of course, Heather was bothered by it. And she's like, your life is no different than mine. And Lisa says, everybody knows I do big things. Lisa being Lisa. Being Lisa. But Heather is bitching about it in her confessionals, of course, because she feels some type of way about how Lisa's pretty much acting like she's better than them. And Lisa ends up asking like if anybody else stood up for her. Like, did anybody stand up for me other than you? And she asked if Meredith did. And Heather says Meredith was Meredith. And Lisa's like, oh, she was silent. And Heather was like, yeah, she defended you at first, but then when it got heated, when Angie pretty much piled on. But before I finish telling y'all the rest of what they was talking about, I find it interesting how she didn't mention how Brittany was actually standing up for her. Because Brittany definitely was. Like, Brittany was standing up for Lisa in a sense to where she really didn't need to, but she did. Like, but she didn't mention her at all. But Lisa then says that she thought that they were good, essentially, like her and Angie. So she's like, what was she saying? And Heather said she was basically co-signing everything that Bronwyn was saying. And Lisa's like, that's funny. That's the most disappointing thing is Angie jumping in and Meredith not stating anything, and then she starts crying. So Heather's like, I mean, it's going to be okay. And Lisa says, yeah, I'm fine. But Heather's sitting there seeing that she ain't fine. And she's like, you don't seem fine. Like, it's okay to be upset that your friends are basically betraying you. But Lisa says in her confessionals that she's crying because she's frustrated because of all these years of sacrificing so much, missing critical events in their lives, putting everything into their brand, and then they sitting here trying to rip it down like it's nothing, essentially. But she then tells Heather, let's dissect everybody else's life. They want to start doing this with mine. Let's do it about theirs. Lisa, you be doing that to them too. So, I mean, it's like they getting they get back with you, basically. That's what it is. Does it make it right? No, but that's what they doing. It's like an eye for an eye. Now, we then move to a scene with Whitney and Bron when they're at the ski slopes and they start talking about the trip and whatever too. So Whitney's like, I mean, I love that you and Heather basically had that moment. And Bron was like, yeah, I was happy about it too. But the next day, when we was talking about her girls and whatnot, I feel like Heather took what I had said negatively. And it's like every time we take baby steps forward, we go straight back. So Whitney's like, just tell her what your intentions were behind it. But Bronwyn then says that she tells her that she appreciated her sticking up for her when she started talking about that shit with Lisa and pretty much co-signing everything that she had stated. So Whitney was like, I mean, I was just frustrated because of the double standard that comes with Lisa digging shit up about us, like me and you. But when she got shit going on in her life, she ain't being forthcoming with it. Like, you gonna dig shit up on us, but you can't tell us what's really going on in your life. Now, Bronwyn was like, yeah, but it's like 5 people sitting here suing you with one person offering your text as evidence. And it's like, okay, do we know in fact that is in fact Lisa's text? Because you can manipulate shit like that. But if it is true, I mean, it's true, but we'll see. But Bronwyn then says that Lisa's response to the lawsuit is her pretty much stating that it's too long for them to ask for it to be repaid, talking about the loan. And then basically stating too that technically they didn't have a repayment scheduled, meaning technically she didn't default on the repayment schedule, basically stating like, we didn't have anything set up. I didn't have a reason to give you the money. So if that is in fact true, that is shady as fuck. But she then says like, if the texts are in fact real, Lisa's not denying the fact that she took the money. So if they co-ran Vita Tequila, why would the lawsuit suggest that she didn't want John? And when she says they, she's talking about John and Lisa. Why would the lawsuit state that she didn't want John knowing about the money? And that's suspect. So she's starting to kind of insinuate that Lisa's out here dealing with somebody behind John's back. But Whitney then asked if he didn't know. And Bron was like, apparently, like supposedly. Bronwyn then tells us that the text basically claims that Lisa's pretty much acknowledging the debt and also her preferring John to pretty much not know about the money is what stood out to her. And she's like, her having a guy pretty much get you on an Amex under his credit and his limit, that's kind of suspect to me. And Whitney was like, is this the mystery man that Angie been talking about? And Bron was like, supposedly. And then she then says too that Lisa been talking about what I'm putting on my Amex. Worry about what you putting on his Amex. And then she then says too that Lisa sat there letting Brittany call her a gold digger. At least I'm spending my own husband's money. I said, but does that make it any less true though? Because that still could mean that you're a gold digger. But I mean, you married, so I guess not. But we get the scene with Mary at home with Robert Jr. And she comes into the room. Well, no, she was in the room, I think. And he came in there talking to her. And she asked, what's up? And he was like, I feel like I'm at a standstill. And he's like, I'm not in that dark space anymore, but it's still kind of there, if that makes sense. And she was like, so essentially you just got to walk out of it. Like, you got to get out of it. And she was like, you have to pretty much retrain your mindset and your thinking pattern, which is true. Like, when it comes to like being in a dark space, whether it's depressive state or what he's going through, your mental is your strong point. Like, that's really what it is. You have to really have a strong mindset to get yourself out of that. So he was like, he didn't expect it to be like this. And she's like, be like what? And he was like, scary. So she ends up asking him why. And he says that he pretty much has to change who he is as a person, because he was like, I'm so used to doing the stuff that I did doing the same stuff every single day. And now that I'm not doing it anymore, it's kind of different. Like, it's like a shell shock. And he was like, I feel like I've been isolating myself a lot as well. And the friends that I used to party with and have fun with, I stopped hanging out with them, which is a good thing. Like, you let go of those people, which is what Mary's about to state, that were not doing you any good. But she basically states that I don't want you feeling isolated, but I want you to understand why it is necessary to isolate from those people that you bonded with over drugs. Because sometimes you trying to elevate and those people are trying to pull you down, which is, it's the truth. I state it all the time. If you ain't new to me, you know I state it all the time. No matter what show I'm recapping, it's always something similar going on where I can relate it back. But I'm the type of person, I don't associate with people that are not on the same mindset as me. And when I say that, not always having to agree with me, but we both have our own goals. We are positively trying to get towards those. When you have people around you that don't have any goals of their own, don't really support you, and are just negative influences on your life, you're going to end up being that way. And you can never allow people to do that. But he was like, now that's isolating. Now that he's isolating, he's getting stimuli from unhealthy sources. And she's like, what? Because you could see Mary kind of got deflated a little bit, but she's trying to hold it together. And he was like, what? And he says, food. And when he says, or no, she said what? And then he said food. And she kind of like relaxed a little bit, but then he said drugs. And I was like, damn. And you could tell she was like trying to like hold it together because she don't want to. Mary's doing what she should be as a parent. Like, in his face, she's giving him the support, and that's what she's supposed to do. But she ends up asking like what it was basically, and he was like, not like that. And she asked if he had smoked today, and he says yes, and it was weed. So he's basically stating that he's still kind of like beating himself up about it because he's not completely off of it yet, and he's not perfect. And I'm like, and that's the part about it too, when you're getting off of stuff like that, it's not going to be quick and immediate. Like, you're going to have to slowly but surely get off of it. It's not going to be easy to completely get off of that immediately when you're on that stuff forever. But she's trying to hold it together, like I stated. And she tells him, like, you just have to take it day by day. And sometimes you fail, but you got to get back up. And that's just really what it is. And in her confessional, she pretty much talks about how that kind of like knocked the wind out of her a little bit. And she talks about how like growing up and stuff, raising him, she basically gave him that energy to where he didn't really want to let her down to the point where he felt like he had to lie to her and couldn't tell her the truth, which is what led to her backing off a little bit, showing him that she actually trusts him and whatnot, because essentially he's going to have to do it himself. Like, she can tell him what to do, but he's going to have to do it himself. Like what she basically told him, like, I can try and help you, but I can only do so much if you don't want to help yourself. So you got to do it yourself. But she then tells him, like, you can only save yourself. And he's like, yeah. But we then move to Bronwyn and Heather. They're out at lunch. And Heather's sitting in the car while Bronwyn's walking in, which I'm almost positive she was sitting there watching her. And the way she was watching her, I'm like, she really can't stand this chick. Well, she walks in and they ended up hugging. And she was like, Bronwyn was stating that she's serious about trying to find a middle ground on if they can be friends or just coexist at least, because they can't really get to that point when it comes to being around everybody else in the group. So they got to do it one-on-one. So it's awkward silence at first because it's very clear Heather don't fuck with her. Like, no matter how much she tries to, she don't fuck with her. Like, she don't. Bronwyn is such a people pleaser and always wants to be liked. That's where she stands with it. But they decide to get a drink first. And Heather claims that she doesn't want to be annoyed with Bronwyn and doesn't want her friendships to feel like a chore, so she's hoping they have a breakthrough. You don't like Bronwyn. Like, no matter how much you state that you want to be on a good foot with her, but you don't. You don't. And we know it's not going to happen by the end of the season. But they start small talk about the kids and whatnot, and Heather says that she's exhausted and she can't wait for Annabelle to graduate. Bronwyn then takes that as a sign to go ahead and pretty much clear the air. It's just like, I want to clear up that moment that we had because I felt like some things might have gotten misunderstood. And I just wanted you to know that I was really just wanting to support you and like pretty much state, like, I kind of could relate to how you felt in the moment. But Heather then says, like, it felt like you was basically trying to state that you were understanding or trying to show that you was understanding. But at the same time, it felt like you was trying to show that you was different than me and wasn't really done mothering and whatever. And basically making it seem like I was doing something wrong because I didn't want to be as hands-on anymore. And it's just like, Heather, that's your insecurities. Cause like, I don't understand where you got that from. But Bronwyn then apologizes and states that she was just trying to empathize with her basically, and stating that I just feel like I didn't do a good enough job as a mom, which is why I want my daughter to still be at home, which is why I did what I did, allowing the boyfriend to move in, because I want to still have more time with her. But Heather then says, like, this conversation is all we really could have and should have had. This is what I would have loved to have had. And Bron was like, yeah, but sometimes I say stuff that just don't land, and then I just shut down thinking that you don't like me. And I said, Bronwyn, that's your fault. You too busy trying to be liked by somebody. If Heather don't fuck with you, she don't fuck with you. Why do you let stuff like that bother you? Like, say what you gotta say. Like, it's shutting down. But that's the part about Bronwyn that I don't like, because she try to act like she's so tough, but she's such a people pleaser. Like, it doesn't make sense. But Heather says, like, in a group setting, Bronwyn doesn't really present it that way. And she says, like, it's very much given like word salad or whatever. But Bronwyn gets in her confessionals, not stating it in real time, popping it hard, stating that it's rich coming from her, considering the fact that she's best friends with Big Mouth Lisa, who has so many words coming out of her mouth. I said, yeah. Yeah. Heather's not going to like watching that back, and Lisa damn sure ain't. So we'll see if you have that same energy at that reunion. But Heather then asked, like, why you would pretty much dump all of Lisa's business and all that data and stuff that you gathered when you claimed that you wanted to get closer to her. And Bronwyn says that she did it, but Lisa basically made it clear that they were not going to be close. And Heather says, so now basically all bets are off. You just going to pretty much dump all that shit out now. And Bronwyn said, like, I wanted to leave New York, talking about the reunion, on good terms with her, but Lisa basically doubled down, quadrupled down on everything that she had said, so I just met her where she was. And Heather's like, so that's retaliation? And she's like, I mean, you can call it what it is, but I basically met Lisa where she was at. So Heather then says, like, y'all really should sit down and stuff and talk, but it shouldn't affect us. Heather. Because I don't believe that Heather doesn't like Bronwyn because of Lisa. I feel like Heather just genuinely don't like Bronwyn. So why are you trying to make it seem like Lisa is the reason as to why y'all don't like each other? Or at least why you don't like her. But Bronwyn was basically stating, like, you just don't be wanting to hear what I have to say, which is what the issue is. And Heather says, like, I mean, I hear you. So they then cheers to being friends, or at least trying to move forward as friends. It's not going to last. It's not. But we get to Amy's Saturday social, which was the funniest part of this episode for me. So everybody's arriving, and of course, Brittany got Jared. She embarrasses herself every single episode. But Mary and Bronwyn, they arrived together. In my opinion, Bronwyn, she was not considering what everybody else is wearing. She looked like she was wearing too much. Like, she did too much considering what everybody else was wearing. But everybody's mingling and whatever, and Lisa's on her way with John. And they're sitting in the car, and this, I don't want to say it's tension between the two of them, but you can tell they definitely are kind of preparing themselves for what they're about to walk into. So she states that she's uneasy after what Heather has said, and it's like the girls are vultures pretty much trying to come after her like she got something to hide when she ain't got nothing to hide. But Heather, she's at the party talking about something. Where's Lisa at? Of course. When are you not thinking about her? But Lisa and John, they finally arrive. Lisa comes walking in talking about something. Oh, look who it is. And Bronwyn's sitting there looking scared, looking like she saw a ghost. I said, of course, classic. But Lisa gets in there and starts greeting everybody. Well, she don't greet everybody. She greets Heather. And she kind of like snubs Angie, gives her a little dry hi. But Meredith comes over and she tells Lisa, like, I missed you like crazy on that trip, and it was interesting. And Lisa's like, okay, well, then tell me about it. Because, I mean, me and Heather talked at lunch, and she kind of told me who was being a good friend and who wasn't. And she ends up bringing up how some legal shit came up too. So is there anything else I need to know? Meredith is like, a lot was said. And Lisa's like what? And Meredith says, I'm going to just let the people that was stating it say what they got to say because it was not nice. Brittany comes over there, and of course, Brittany going to let it sing. She let the chopper sing. So Lisa hugs her and is like, okay, so let me get your perspective on this trip. What happened? Brittany started talking. Bronwyn brought the shit up. Lisa says, okay, and what did Angie say? Brittany says she compared you to Jen Shaw. Lisa said, are you kidding me? And Brittany says, don't shoot the messenger because Lisa getting high. But Whitney is over there overhearing them, and she's telling, I think it was Bronwyn over there too. They over there talking about that Lisa, Angie comparing her to Jen Shaw. So Lisa's getting louder, stating that it's psycho for them to compare her to Jen Shaw, a criminal, which it is. But she then says that she wouldn't do that to somebody, not even the one that she hated. And she would never do it to Angie. And for her to do this after everything she did last season for her, or 2 years ago, this is how she repays her. So she's tripping out. But Whitney then tells Angie that they over there talking about you. And Bronwyn then says, yeah, Brittany was over there telling Lisa about how you compared her to Jen Shaw. And Mary's like, shut up. But Lisa, she then says, Angie's right there. So we just need to go have a conversation. And Meredith's like, yeah, that's a good idea. And she's like, yeah, we're going over there. So Lisa moves over there and hugs Mary, asks how she is, and moves straight to Angie. Got up in her face. I think we need to have a chat. And Angie's like, yeah. So Angie says, so what did Brittany tell you so I can kind of like undo the mess? She already knows Brittany over there running that mouth. But Brittany didn't say anything that wasn't true. So there ain't really much that you can really undo because everything she said was what happened. But Lisa then says, like, so what do you want to tell me? Because I did the same thing Lisa did. I'm not going to tell you what she told me so you can jump off of that. What did you say? So Angie says the lawsuits were brought up. And she said Bronwyn was bringing up documents and information, and Lisa gets to getting in on her. She didn't even go to law school, talking about Bronwyn. She didn't even go to law school, and I bet you she didn't go to college. I see, she is crazy. She's like, so why are y'all sitting here believing anything that she would say? Bronwyn walks up and says, so it's clear you're mad at me and not at Angie. So why are you doing this with her? Like, we need to have a conversation. I said, we know you want that. Like, you want Lisa's attention, but of course, give it to her. But Lisa says, I don't want to talk to you. You're dismissed. So Bronwyn got all this hype energy in the confessionals that she didn't have in that moment, but she eventually gave her the energy. I was shocked. But Lisa then says, I'm not upset with you. I just don't like you. Clear. I mean, that wasn't shocking to anybody else watching it, but it might have been to Bronwyn. But Angie then says, like, not Angie, Lisa says, me and Angie have more history than you, and we can work our shit out. Basically, like, I don't care to work shit out with you. I don't really fuck with you like that. But Meredith is sitting there trying to mediate them, and she's like, basically, Bronwyn, this is not good timing. Bronwyn's like, I mean, shit, I don't think Lisa should be mad at Angie, so she need to be arguing with me, basically. But the husbands were in the room, and Seth over there asking Jared if he's in love with Brittany, and he can't even state it. He can't even state it. He tried to stumble into stating it, but he's like, I love her, but I mean, I'm in love. He can't even get it out because it's not true. He don't love her. Like, he just embarrassing her every single day. But Lisa, she's telling Bronwyn she got zero interest in talking to her. That's clear as day. But Bronwyn says, so you sit and talk to everybody else about me, and then you don't want to talk to me now because I had said the things that make people question you. And Lisa's like, you're dishonest, and I have a question about you, you gout dick sucker. This scene right here cracked me up. When Lisa said that, I died. When I saw it in the trailer, it really made me laugh. But watching this again, I was like, damn, they really had this early in the season. I thought it was going to be later. But Bronwyn said, so I'm a dick sucker now. And Lisa said, you a gout dick sucker. I said, she is a trip. But Whitney was like, I thought gouts were in your feet. But Lisa then says that you were a dick sucker. You said you were a dick sucker before. That's why you got clothes. I said, Lisa, please. And Bronwyn says, no, my husband pays for my clothes. Lisa says, yeah, because you suck his dick. I was like, I don't believe that. Like, looking at Bronwyn's husband, y'all tell me if you think she doing that. I don't see it, but apparently she is. But Bronwyn says, at least my husband is the one who's paying my bill or paying for it. Who is paying your Amex bill? Somebody else in court documents is stating that he's paying for it. Whitney co-signs it. Lisa says, no, he's not. And Lisa ends up asking Bronwyn if she had told Emma. And Bron was like, don't put your finger in my face. And Lisa's like, I'll do whatever I want. We're going to get the head nod now. She's sitting there playing in her face. And Bron was like, you can make fun of me all you want. It's not going to clean up them lawsuits. Cash will. I said, oh, okay, Bronwyn. But they start going back and forth about sucking dick again. And Lisa's like, Bronwyn brags about sucking dick to get the amount of times I done said that word on this damn. That's how many times they said it, y'all. But she said she was bragging about that to get out of paying the Amex bill. And Bronwyn claims that she enjoys having sex with her husband. Like I said, I don't believe it, but Mary's face, that's my thumbnail, cracked me up. She looked like, what the fuck is going on here? But Lisa's like, oh, so now you're okay with Todd now, but when you was in Mexico, you wasn't, which she ain't lying. But Bronwyn's like, I mean, we have ups and downs like in any other marriage like everybody else does. And Lisa's like, well, nobody talks worse about your husband than you do. True. But Bronwyn then says, well, nobody borrowed money behind their husband's back other than you, bitch. I said, oh, shit. And Lisa's like, that's not true. And Bronwyn says, I mean, is John not aware of that because the text state otherwise? And Lisa's like, I mean, she thinks she a lawyer now, talking about Bronwyn. She thinks she a lawyer now. She didn't even go to college. And Bronwyn says, I mean, I don't have to be a lawyer to read the newspaper. I said, oh, she getting you, Lisa. She getting you. But Lisa then says that you should really go to school. And Bronwyn says, I mean, you should go to work and pay off them bills and pay off them lawsuits. I said, damn, Bronwyn. Damn, she actually stepping up. But Lisa calls her a disgusting pig. And she's like, I'm going to create a website and post all of her lies. And Bronwyn's like, yeah, we know you love doing that because you done did it to many of us before. And Lisa's like, this is a joke. But that was the episode. It was funny to me, especially at the end. Lisa gives good TV. She gives us good TV because look at what happens. Look at what happens. But if y'all got this far, and haven't already, thumbs it up, get in the comments, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace.